Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel BethChatsBooks. Now today's video is going to be kind of a February wrap up, kind of where I'm at. I know it's not the end of February yet, but I'm going to give you a recap of kind of where I'm up to because I'm just starting a big book which I think will probably take me to the end of February, so I thought I'd do a kind of catch up, bringing everything all together kind of video. So the first book I want to briefly talk about is Girl by Edna OBrien. Now I was reading this, I don't think I finished it the last time I spoke to you guys. So this follows Mariam, who lives in Nigeria, and she's a student at one of the schools, and it gets taken over and a lot of the female students get kidnapped and sent to Boko Haram, and from there they kind of get infiltrated into that society. So they previously lived in a Christian community and then they are forced to kind of be indoctrinated into the Muslim community. They are forced to marry people that belong to the community that they're now indoctrinated into, to have their children, and then from there the story kind of develops. So I really enjoyed that story. I give it 4 out of 5 stars. I really connected with Mariam. There's some quite harrowing emotions and descriptions and depictions of violence in that novel that were quite shocking, but it was a very well written novel and I really understood why it's had a lot of hype recently. It was really engrossing, even though it did have quite disturbing subject matter, but I don't want to dwell too much on it because I did previously mention that I'd read it. But yeah, I gave it 4 out of 5 stars and really enjoyed it. And then the next book that I read was Alisha 10 minutes 38 seconds in this strange world. Now this book really surprised me because I didn't know I was going to love it quite as much as I did. So I ended up giving this book 4.5/5 out of 5 stars. This book is split into 2. First of all, the last 10 minutes and 38 seconds of Tequila Layla's, the main character's, consciousness. So we start the novel knowing that she has been disposed of in a bin in the middle of Istanbul, and that she's a prostitute in her 50s, and that somebody's committed a murder and killed her and deposited her in this bin. So we kind of learn about who she is and what things meant to her and her connection to people via the last 10 minutes and 38 seconds of her consciousness, which are depicted in the first half of the novel. So every few minutes a smell is remembered that connects to a memory. And then the second half deals with the core friends in Tequila Layla's life and how they learn of her death and how they try to honour her and how they kind of live in a post-Layla world. So I found it really intriguing. I wondered halfway through the book where they were going to go with this, because obviously once we were counting down the minutes of her death I kind of thought, well, we're only halfway through the book, so where is the rest of this development going to go? But Alisha writes in such a way that you commit to what she's saying and you go on that journey with her, and it's a really rewarding experience. So I really connected with Layla. She has kind of friends who are outsiders just like herself in the community and have previously been ostracised, and they have this beautiful family community. It doesn't kind of belong to the stereotypical realms of family, but in this book she mentions the difference between kind of blood family and water family. A water family is different than your blood relations, but you can have a strong family unit with that. I don't know whether that's necessarily mentioned in the book or whether I've heard Alisha personally talk about that in interviews, but that concept definitely runs through here, that this is her water family. And who she connects with, because obviously we learn in the first half of the book that she has a very difficult relationship with her own parents. But this was really good. I know that this has been put on the BookTube prize, and I know that I think this was on a long list for a prize. A lot of people have said this isn't her best work, that there's better ones that she's written, so being as impressed with this novel as I was, I will probably make sure that I go out and check out some more of her work. So there's that one. And then the next book I read was Reservoir 13 by John McGregor. So this follows a rural community in the Peak District. a whole host of different characters. The book starts with a 13-year-old going missing when she is holidaying in the Peak District in this remote community. Her name is Bex or Becca or Rebecca, and we don't know anything about her. And then this book follows the next 10 years up to the 10-year anniversary of her going missing and how the community adapts to that. So I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. I was really intrigued by how this book was plotted, because John McGregor doesn't give you the satisfaction of going into the disappearance. We don't have any closure either way. It's an event that's occurred. The focus of the novel really is on the community. So there's a few teenagers who were a similar age to Becca. We learn about their on-off romances with each other and their applications to university and college and going forth with their lives, and how their development happens in the next 10 years. We have a vicar in the community, a female vicar, and how she kind of tries to keep the community all together through the events, and how she tries new and some successful, some unsuccessful ways of trying to get the community together. We have on-off romances, divorces, new relationships flowering, and it's just really intricately woven. It's kind of an omnipresent narrator who is observing what's going on within this community without being emotionally attached. So we just kind of know a lot of things that happen in a bird's eye kind of aerial viewpoint, but we don't get that core emotion that you would expect with the disappearance novel. None of the community are personally attached to the child that goes missing, because she was just kind of here on holiday, so there's kind of a distance between the event, and the narrator doesn't connect in an emotional way with the actual characters. So things are happening like new relationships forming, or divorces, or other kind of personal developments that we kind of have a detached representation of, because the narrator doesn't write about them in an emotive way. So I thought that was a very unique writing style, one that I actually really enjoyed, which I didn't expect I would, because I kind of connect most with the emotional kind of novels that connect people and relationships together. But this was handled in a really sophisticated way, and it was a very ambitiously structured novel but executed very well. So I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. Like I've said, really enjoyed this, but obviously it was just missing that extra oomph for me because of the way the narration style was, which is just personal preference. So there's that one. And then the next one I read was White Teeth by Zadie Smith, which I gave between 4.5 and 5. I'm leaning more towards 5 because I feel like I will always kind of have a deep affiliation with this novel and a deep kind of soft spot for it. So this was written in 2000, and this follows the Iqbals and the Joneses and their 2 families. So Archie and Samad both kind of fight in World War II, and they grow a friendship, and then from there they both get married and have children, and we kind of go through the generations. And it's set in London in the 2000 contemporary age, and because she kind of wrote it in that contemporary age, even though now it is 20 years old. And it deals with kind of multiculturalism. So Archie marries Clara, who has a Jamaican identity, and they have Irie. Then Samad marries Alsana, and they have Majid and Millet, who are twin boys, and it's all about them trying to find an identity in the UK and this kind of debate on multiculturalism and community, and also that mixed race heritage where you kind of feel like a home is a very ambiguous concept and you don't feel a connection to either. So one of the twins, Majid, ends up going back to India where his father was from, and his father believes that that will help him assimilate his identity back to his roots, but it doesn't kind of work out as planned, and he kind of comes back with a different identity, and the brother who stayed behind ends up kind of being more infiltrated in this kind of growth of extremism within the Muslim community that is kind of on the rise and is quite prominent in this novel, and all these different ways of identity and how this works. So this is a really, really rich novel, and considering it's 20 years old, it has not aged badly at all. These are still issues and identities and communities that we still acknowledge and understand today, and this confusion around it is also really interesting. I fell in love with all the characters and I understood all the different viewpoints very well. It's just a really rich novel. One minor twinge that I didn't like about this novel was around page 155. Zadie Smith makes a bit of a faux pas in my book, which is she describes one of the school children in the scene, if I can find it for you, as Sophie, a vaguely retarded 12-year-old, which I don't know how that went down in 2000, but in 2020 it's not really going down very well. But that's only minor niggle, because when I read it, it kind of gave me an uncomfortable feeling, because I didn't like that. But that's the only criticism I have of the entire novel, to be honest. I think it deals with multiculturalism and race and community and mixed identity really, really well with both the twins and Irie. They're also starting to develop their sense of personality and identity through their teenage years and onwards, and that's reflected really, really well. I loved that we kind of got the backstory of all of the main players in this, so the parents then down to the children and the generations before, and how there's this kind of layering of legacy or identity or inheritance of culture and identity as well, which was really, really interesting. And then thrown in here is a little bit of science as well that kind of relates back to race and genetics and other really interesting topics that even now are really prominent, and these themes are timeless and really, really good. So I would recommend, if anybody hasn't ever got around to reading this, like myself, it definitely ages really well, and you can definitely pick this up and really, really enjoy it. So there's that one. And then the next one I read was Animal Farm by George Orwell. I don't really need to describe the plot too much because this is a very famous modern classic. So this follows the animals on Manor Farm that then becomes Animal Farm. And there's a bunch of animals who kind of overthrow the farmer, Mr. Jones, I believe. And they think that the whole enterprise now of the farm will go down to this collective concept of everybody mucking in and doing their share, and they are now liberated from humans. And then slowly through time, two pigs, who are more of the kind of clever animals on the farm, start to change the status quo. So Napoleon, who's the kind of big brawn pig, and Squealer, who is a bit of an overweight pig but very intelligent and sly, they start to kind of change the operation. They start to basically take over the farm, and they've gone from one evil to another, really. So instead of Farmer Jones being in charge of the farm, these two are in charge, and there's new rules that keep changing all the time, and very cruel punishments dished out to the animals who don't comply. So obviously, like everybody is very well aware of now, this book is kind of talking about the rise of communism and the Russian Revolution, which I did get from the novel. Personally, I haven't done a lot of Russian history, so it wasn't quite as prominent maybe for me, because my context wasn't as strong as maybe somebody else who understands and has read this novel. I quite like the bit at the end where the pigs start negotiating with the other farmers, and George Orwell says something along the lines of, on the last page, it was impossible to kind of differentiate who was the human and who was the pig. And it has really interesting things of kind of greed and this idea of enslavement and politics. It's meant to be a warning that we should treat humans with more respect, and maybe our political systems are not quite as divine as we hope. And very much this is still the case even in the modern world now. There are still a lot of regimes across the globe who still treat people like this. So it's definitely still prominent and timeless and really important that I think everybody gives this book a read. It's only about 90 pages, so obviously I raced through this book, but I think George Orwell's writing style isn't my favourite in the world. He writes really well and succinctly, and it's definitely very readable, and this one was very readable, and I don't remember having any issues reading 1984. But they're books that I like, but I just can't quite love. There's just a disconnect there, and I don't know whether it's the writing style, or maybe that they're quite political in subject matter, and maybe that's not my overall favourite thing to read in a novel. I don't know, but I ended up giving this 3.5 out of 5 stars because it's a nice palate cleansing kind of read. It's got a lot of food for thought in a small amount of pages, but it doesn't give me that woe factor that's shaking up my world, and 1984 didn't either really, in compared to other dystopian literatures that I'd read, and this I really enjoyed. I'm glad I've ticked it off and read it, but I just didn't love it. So there's that one. And then, so there are all the books that I am up to date with reading. I'm going to quickly show you what I have got to read. So I'm currently reading The Overstory by Richard Powers. I'm only about 160 pages in, and this novel is 625 pages, so it's going to take me a little bit of time. So far it's just setting the scene of different stories that are going to interconnect. It's a really interesting style because it's weaving this theme of trees and nature into each story, but each story is quite unique, and the focus in this kind of novel isn't necessarily people and plot, but about connection to nature. So it's a really interesting look. Very different from what I'm used to, but I am quite enjoying it. But I think I don't have much room to make any significant commentary at the moment because I'm only such a small way into such a big book. So there's that one. And then I have already mentioned these books, so it's just a whistle-stop tour. I still have Middle England to read by Jonathan Coe. I still have The Dark Circle by Linda Grant. I still have Bridge of Clay by Marcus Zusak to read. And I still have Lost Children Archive by Valeria Lucelli. And then I also, from the last time I went to the library, took out some more books. So I've taken out Hagseed by Margaret Atwood, which is, I think, a retelling of The Tempest. I think a lot of people kind of know what this is about, but I believe it's roughly about a man who takes a post as director of a festival, and then he kind of is taken off. I don't know what happens, something ensues and he's no longer in that position and he wants to plot revenge. So that's all I know about this one, but obviously a lot of people have praised this quite highly and they want an excuse to read more Atwood, so I saw it at the library and took it out. Then I also took out Moonstone by Sejan. This was the book of the month at the library when I was in, so I decided to take it out because obviously I took Reservoir 13 out, which was the last book of the month, and really enjoyed that. So this says it's set in 1918 in Reykjavik, and it talks about the Spanish flu coming ashore and how this impacts on the Icelandic community. I don't know much more than that, but I recently went to Iceland, really enjoyed it, and really want to know more about the culture, so I thought it kind of ticked a few boxes, so I'll tell you a lot more about this when I actually get around to reading it. And then I took out Salt Slow by Julia Armfield, which a lot of people have praised it. It's a short story collection. I don't really know what the themes are so much in this. It says teenagers develop ungodly appetites, a city becomes an insomniac overnight, blurring the mythic and the gothic with the everyday. So I like to kind of dip in every so often to short story collections because sometimes those have really profound effects on my memory. I remember that sometimes a lot of short stories, because of their intensity, they create snapshots which create really visual images in my mind sometimes that a novel can't necessarily sustain because of the pacing with a novel. So sometimes I can really find a short story that I really connect with. For example, I had a past short story by Daphne du Maurier about when a child went missing, and the reveal at the end is a snapshot in my mind because of the shock horror of the twist. So sometimes short stories can create that, which I find fascinating. So this has been really highly regarded this year, so I really wanted to get to it, and then I saw it was in the new releases arrival section of the library. I thought, why not? And then the last one I took out was The Starless Sea by Eric Morgenstern. Morgenstern? I was going to say Morgenstein, but Morgenstern. And I know this is kind of more on the realms of fantasy than I usually read because I found it in the fantasy section of the library, but I have always meant to read The Night Circus. This is a really respected author and a lot of people on BooktUbe loved The Night Circus, so I want to give this one a read because I feel like this is more my cup of tea because it's almost about a world created from novels and he kind of jumps into the different worlds as far as I remember someone saying. When Zachary Rawlins stumbles across a strange book hidden in his university library, it leads him on a quest. So yeah, he kind of falls into books, which I think the premise of that just sounds really, really interesting and something that I would really like. So if it helps me get a foothold into the fantasy world and the fantasy genre a bit more than I am now, I will certainly give that a go. But I'd already seen this the last time I went in the library, and then I thought on the off chance if I go and it's still there this time, then I will pick it up, which happened, so I did. So there's a few good old books for me to be getting on with, and then my Amazon package arrived today, so I just want to quickly show you these books. Now I can't say too much after I've read these because these are the last 4 books on my list. I'm Group D for the BooktUbe Fiction Round 1, so these are the books I'm expected to read and review, so I won't be able to review any of these books once I've read them. But I thought I'd let you guys know that I'm reading them. So I had already read An Orchestra of Minorities, and then I have Jacqueline Woodson's Red at the Bone to read. So this says, an unexpected teenage pregnancy brings together 2 families from different social classes and exposes the private hopes, disappointments and longings that can bind or divide us. So this seems like an interesting one. I've noticed that Candice Carty-Williams has said this will strike you in the heart, and everybody's raving about Queenie at the moment, so I thought that was quite relevant. So let's see how we get on with this one. And the next one is The Innocence by Michael Crummy, and this says, Ada and Everett Best are orphaned in an isolated cove on Newfoundland's northern coastline. Their home is a stretch of rocky shore governed by the feral ocean by a relentless pendulum of abundance and murderous scarcity. Still, children with only the barest notion of the outside world, they have nothing but the family's boat and the little knowledge passed on haphazardly by their mother and father to keep them. So that kind of sounds like a story of survival. I think these covers are beautiful as well, by the way. These are all American novels and I got them on Amazon, so I had to wait quite a bit for them to arrive, but I think this cover is just stunning, and this one as well, but my camera's playing up, so it's not, they don't look as quite as beautiful, but yeah, there's that one. And then Fleischman is in Trouble by Taffy Brodesser Ackner. This one is finally free from his nightmare of a marriage. Toby Fleischman is ready for a life of online dating and weekend-only parental duties, but as he optimistically looks to a future that is wildly different from the one he imagined, his life turns upside down as his ex-wife Rachel suddenly disappears. So this sounds like a disappearance novel. I keep seeing this in Waterstones as well. After I ordered this, I saw this in Waterstones and I was like, oh, I could have just got it a lot faster. But this looks like something that's going to be quite powerful. I think the imagery as well is quite striking on this novel as well. I'm excited because a lot of these titles I've never heard of before, so it's a great excuse to read more. And obviously with Barter Hordes being an American, he has picked quite a few American titles as well on the list, and this is quite a good excuse for me to read more American literature, so I'm really excited. And the last one is Ta-Nehisi Coates' The Water Dancer. So I read Between the World and Me a long time ago by him, but this has also got quite a lot of hype recently, so I'm quite excited to read this. So it says, young Hiram Walker was born into bondage. When his mother was sold away, Hiram was robbed of all memory of her, but was gifted with a mysterious power. Years later, with him, Hiram almost drowns in a river. That same power saves his life. This brush with death births an urgency in Hiram and a daring scheme to escape from the only home he's ever known. So yeah, I don't know much about this, but I'm excited to get to it. Also, I love that the kind of American paperbacks are quite big and quite floppy. The print is quite generous on them as well, so I think that will be are quite an interesting read as well, so they're all quite diverse, and I haven't read any of them, so it's going to be exciting for me. But that is everything. I'm sorry if this video has been quite long-winded, but I just wanted to keep you guys up to date, because obviously I'm going to try and get through these and catch up with these with you. But these 4 books, especially once I start reading them, I can't really talk too much about them, so just wanted to let you guys know where I'm at. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll be back very soon with a brand new video. Bye now.